This lesson is concerning the second part of the chemistry part of the human body, or bodies in general. But mostly we're dealing with humanity, so we'll deal with the levels concerning um, the human body. This is dealing with pH balance, pH values. I said in an earlier class, I don't know if you've seen all the slides or seen all the lessons, but I have definitely mentioned this subject before. It deals with the hydrogen ions within the body, or a measurement of acid in our bodies in order to sustain life. So what we'll do is that we'll go over what these values should be and what they are, and the relationships to each other, and we'll talk about when they're out of balance. So here we go. We'll start the class. This slide pretty much goes in depth about how to explain, how to identify an acid. It usually gets dissolved in a water solution. Acid is hydrogen ions, as I said before, um, and then negatively charged, some other negatively charged ion that's in the solution as well. But primarily, you can taste the sour taste. It has a litmus paper test, which gives you a red tint and color. And these are some examples of the acidic solutions that we come in contact with. We have vinegar, hydraulic acid of the stomach. These are both acids. Also, you'll find that many of our fruits contain acidic substances, such as oranges and citrus fruits of various types are also acidic. So these are all good sources for um, hydrogen ions for our balances and nutrients. So go on to the next slide. Well, there's always an opposite and perhaps equal response. Uh, what we have here is an alkali. An alkali is kind of an opposite thing. It absorbs hydrogen, um, and pretty much is what is used in antacids. It basically goes into your tummy and sucks up all that acid running around, and you're able to feel a lot better. Uh, it absorbs hydrogen ions, and it is a litmus test of blue on the paper. And some of the examples of this is ammonia. Um, the antacids is right there for heartburn. And it's basically the opposite of your acids. It has a bitter taste. So we'll go on to the next one. Uh, this slide brings up a very interesting chemical reaction that occurs when you add a equal amount of an acid and a base. You will get a salt and water. Um, that's a great way of neutralizing these two highly vitable, highly destructive elements or chemicals. An acid by itself can destroy tissue, and a base by itself can destroy tissue. If you're able to neutralize them, then you're able to resolve the issue and no longer cause tissue damage. So equal amounts, you're going to get pretty much a salt and water combination. What really occurs is that normally you don't have the convenience of having equal amounts. So uh, neutralization of a strong acid and a strong base, you're going to try to get a pH value equal to 7, which is a very neutral level. It's like uh, it's like seawater. It's a little less than that. It's 7 is neutral. Um, it's neither acidic. It's neither a base. But if you get a neutralization of a strong acid and a weak base, you're going to have a pH of less than 7, making that solution acidic, um, which could be harmful. And you want to be near the 7 so it's neutralized and not able to cause any harm. And conversely, if you have a strong base and you neutralize it with a weak acid, you're going to get a pH greater than 7. So you're going to be alkaline. And alkaline can also damage tissue and can be harmful as well. So it has to be just like the three bears. It has to be just right. So the solution is neutralized, and it means that salts are formed from equal weights of acid and base. So that's important to understand that you're not truly neutralized unless they are equal weights of acid and base. So that's the part that you get from here. Uh, Life is not this way. It's not ever perfect, but that's how come our bodies tolerate 7.4. We're not perfectly at 7, and our homeostasis pH values. So that's something to think about. Is that 7 is what you're looking at here on the pH scale, but it's not what nature provides necessarily for every life form. This is an illustration of the pH scale. As you can see, it's measured from 0 to 14. 0 being the most acidic and 14 being the most alkaline. It's important to understand the importance of pH value within the human body. As I stated earlier, 7.4 is the pH value that the body strives to maintain. The human body is built to naturally maintain a healthy balance of acidity and alkalinity. Lungs and kidneys play a key role in this process. A normal blood pH level is 7.4 on a scale of 0 to 14, where 0 is the most acidic and 14 is the most basic. This value can vary slightly in either direction, and we do mean slightly. If the lungs or kidneys are malfunctioning, your blood's pH level can become imbalanced. Disruption in your acid-base balance can lead to medical conditions known as acidosis and alkalosis. Carbon dioxide is a slightly acidic compound. It's also a waste product produced by cells in the body as they use oxygen in the mitochondria. The cells release it into the bloodstream, the CO2, and it's taken to your lungs, and when we exhale, you're expelling that carbon dioxide, a process that also helps regulate your body's pH balance by reducing acidity. The amount of carbon dioxide you exhale is a function of how deeply you inhale or exhale. Your brain constantly monitors this in order to maintain the proper pH balance in our bodies. Acidosis refers to having a blood that's too acidic, or a pH value of 7.35. That is extremely close to 7.4. It's a slight movement only. Alkalosis refers to having a blood level that is too basic, and the pH of that is 7.45. So we're not even moving a whole point, or not even a decimal point. We're moving at 0.005 of a point. Very, very small movement, and you're in trouble. When acidosis or alkalosis is caused by the lung disorder or issue with exhalation, it's referred to as a respiratory. When acidosis or alkalosis is caused by a problem with the functioning of the kidneys, it is referred to as a metabolic acidosis or metabolic alkalosis. Some of the conditions that can cause respiratory acidosis are emphysema, asthma, and severe pneumonia. Now, metabolic acidosis. It's having too little sodium bicarbonate in your blood. It can be a cause. A potential complication is severe vomiting and diarrhea. That's when you lose a lot of your sodium, when you have diarrhea or loose stools. Um, build up of ketones due to lack of insulin. You can, if you don't have any insulin in your body, and you can build up your ketones. It's called ketone acidosis. Um, these people are diabetics from diabetes. Uh, if you have fascia buildup of lactic acid, a possible complication of alcohol misuse. Um, Cancer and seizures can also cause acidosis, metabolic acidosis. Failure of the kidneys to release acid into the bloodstream, known as renal tubular acidosis. So these are all very severe medical conditions you can have. And they, like I said, you slightly move the scale to 7.35 and you're in trouble. It doesn't take much. And that's why it's important to understand the medical consequences. Now, this is just one, two things that can happen with the pH. There are numerous other causes of the pH to be imbalanced, but the primary ones are the kidneys and the lungs, your respiratory usages can cause this. So, very important issue to keep in mind in the medical field. Homeostasis is essential for living cells to function optimally, which we've discussed in the past, several slides prior to this. Maintenance of a balanced pH, once again, there's the values. Anything above 7.35 or below 7.35, 7.45, you're in trouble. So the desired is 7.4, which would be the perfect blood pH. As you can see, they allow a little movement on this slide, but it's between the two trouble points. So if you're at 7.35, you're in trouble. If you're at 7.45, you're in trouble. But if you're in between that, you're not. So it's a very, very small amount of movement. It mentions intracellular fluid that is in the cells. That keeps your cells hydrated on the inside and keeps them from looking like a raisin, which is undesirable. You have the extracellular fluids, which you're familiar with as being blood for one, lymphatic fluid, and the interstitial fluids. It bathes the outer membrane walls of the cells and keeps them moist. The moisture that's caused allows for transfusion of nutrients across the cell membrane. So, you know, in essence, a dry cell is a dead cell. So that's important that the moisture is there. The thing about homeostasis and acid base is that if you want to think about some of the problems you can have with the pH values, and I discussed earlier about respiratory and kidney failure, I'm going to briefly discuss ketone acidosis, which is a diabetic issue, and it occurs in a lot of diabetics. Ketoacidosis can be severe, and and if it's not detected and treated properly, it can lead to a coma, and the patient can die. A common early symptom of ketoacidosis is deep, rapid breathing. So sometimes the medical staff members get it confused with having a respiratory issue, simply because they're breathing rapidly. They're trying to drive off all the CO2 to lower the acidosis in their body, in their bloodstream. So the CO2 they're blowing off is actually assisting them to get their acidosis into 7.4 if possible. Another common symptom is a fruity smell of the breath. They smell like, you know, a fruit or or some sort that is coming from the breath. And it includes the dry skin and mouth, a flushed face, nausea. They can have vomiting, stomach pain. Treatment for diabetic coma is ingestion or injection of sugar. Its prevention is proper daily administration of insulin. So it's pretty important that they're treated as quickly as possible to prevent any tissue damage. A person who is diabetic and uses insulin can initiate ketoacidosis if a dose of insulin is missed. So they can only miss, none. Uh, so if you have diabetes, you really have to be on the ball to take care of yourself. Among people with type 2 diabetes, um, American descendants are more likely to go into ketoacidosis than those of other ethnic backgrounds. Although the reason for this is unknown, um, and it certainly have no idea. So you can see the genetics have something to do with being in the ketoacidosis as well. Now, this is discussing buffers. Um, it mentions a thorough compound called a buffer. Sodium bicarbonate is up there, and that's a buffer. So the variety of buffer systems exist in the body that helps maintain the pH of the blood and other fluids within a narrow range between 7.35 and 7.45. A buffer is a substance that prevents a radical change in fluid pH by absorbing excess hydrogen or hydroxyl ions. Most commonly, the substance that absorbs the ion is either a weak acid, which takes up a hydroxyl ion, or a weak base, which takes up a hydrogen ion. Several substances serve as buffers in the body, including cell and plasma membranes, proteins, hemoglobin, phosphates, bicarbonate ions, and carbonic acid. The bicarbonate buffer is the primary buffering system of the intracellular fluids surrounding the cells and tissues throughout the body. So the respiratory and renal systems also play a major role, which we discussed earlier, considering the acid-base homeostasis of removing carbon dioxide and hydrogen ions, respectively, from the body. So it's important to understand how buffers work, and they're a natural process in the body and are released during certain chemical changes automatically as a normal day of course to maintain the balance of 7.4. So it's a very complicated subject, pH, but you should have a good understanding of how important it is to maintain it and what are some of the causes of the imbalances. Thank you again for choosing this lesson, and there'll be one more slide. That concludes this lesson. I want to leave you with the idea that there are numerous resources available to you. You can contact your primary instructor by obtaining the contact information from the Blackboard prompt named faculty availability. And then there's a SendGauge that you can go through on the internet, which has the book, the dictionary, and the glossary. And it has a search prompt that you can use to obtain information by just putting your word that you're seeking and hit enter, and it'll give you options on what it has in the material provided within the book. Then there's the UMA library, which is also available to you, and it's quite extensive. It has a plethora of different types of material, from textbooks to journals to videos, on topics of almost everything you can conceive of. Like I said, it's a library, and you can use it as a resource and help you to further understand the material. Once again, it's been a pleasure to be your instructor during this lesson, and I wish you the best.